Olivia clenched the patient chart in her hands, her breath coming fast and uneven as she hurried down the hospital corridor. Her legs ached from a grueling 16-hour shift, but before she could even think about resting, a sharp voice rang out from the nurse's station. "Carter. Room 214, patient needs assistance now. Move it." She halted, her brows knitting together. She had already been to room 214 3 times today. The patient was stable, no emergencies, no sudden changes. "I just checked on that case. Is there an issue?" Heather folded her arms, arching a brow, with a smirk curling at the corner of her lips. "Then you must know that patient pretty well by now. Go on, unless you can't handle it." A few hushed chuckles rippled through the station. Olivia's grip tightened around the file, her nails digging into the thick paper cover. The temptation to fire back burned in her chest, but she knew that no matter what she said, they would twist it into another reason why she was not good enough. She inhaled deeply, steeling herself, meeting Heather's gaze without flinching. Then, without a word, she turned on her heel and walked away. But she knew this wasn't just about being overworked. This was a silent war she had to fight every single day. What would you do if you were constantly pushed to your limits just because you were different? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss more stories of resilience and justice. Now let's uncover what really happened to Olivia. This day started like any other at St. Charles Medical Center, chaotic, relentless, and brimming with energy. The hospital was known as one of the best in the country, and at its core was Dr. James Walker, the golden star of the surgical department. James wasn't just a skilled surgeon. He was exceptional. At 6'2", with piercing blue eyes and sharp features that looked as if they were sculpted from marble, he commanded attention wherever he went. Nurses and female doctors alike didn't hesitate to express their admiration. Some showered him with excessive praise during meetings, while others lingered in the staff lounge hoping for a fleeting conversation. There was even an informal group of white nurses, jokingly referred to as the James Walker Fan Club, who kept a close watch on his every move, who he spoke to, who he had lunch with, and which nurse was assigned to assist him in surgery, all of it becoming endless gossip. James, however, met this attention with silent indifference. He was polite but distant, never encouraging the behavior. Some mistook his aloofness for charm, but the truth was he was exhausted by the shallow interactions. He loved his work, the adrenaline of saving lives, the precision of each procedure, but the hospital politics and unnecessary theatrics drained him. That morning, the usual hum of the surgical ward seemed louder than usual. James strode down the hallway, his white coat billowing slightly with each purposeful step as he scanned through patient files. Entering the surgical lounge, he barely acknowledged the group of nurses whispering nearby. "Good morning, Dr. Walker," one of them greeted him with a hopeful smile. "Morning," he replied curtly, not breaking stride. As he walked away, the nurses exchanged knowing glances. "He's so focused, that's what makes him even more attractive," one of them sighed. "Focused and still single," another added. "He just hasn't met the right one yet." "Just wait." The conversation abruptly halted when someone else entered the room, Olivia Carter. She had only been working at St. Charles for 3 weeks, yet people were already talking. Olivia was different. Even standing still, she left an impression. Tall and poised, her smooth brown skin contrasted beautifully against her crisp scrubs, her warm eyes sharp with quiet intelligence. Her naturally curly hair was neatly tucked beneath her surgical cap. She carried herself with an effortless grace, her hands always busy, always purposeful. Unlike many other nurses, Olivia steered clear of hospital gossip. She came in, did her job with excellence, and left. Some admired her professionalism, but others found her hard to read. Her quiet nature was mistaken for arrogance, maybe even intimidation. Morning Olivia greeted softly. As she passed the group, her gaze briefly sweeping over them before heading toward her locker. No one responded. The moment she turned her back, the whispers resumed. She seemed standoffish. Silence isn't standoffish. Maybe she's just better than us. The remark dripped with sarcasm. Olivia heard every word but didn't react. She was used to it, the hushed judgments, the assumptions made before anyone bothered to know her. Not worth my time, she reminded herself. By noon, the surgical unit was a flurry of movement. A trauma patient had just been rushed in an emergency requiring immediate intervention. The operating room buzzed with urgency as the team prepped for surgery. Dr. James Walker arrived minutes later, already scrubbed in and ready to lead. "Vitals," he asked, stepping into position. "Stable for now, but dropping fast," the anesthesiologist reported. James scanned the room quickly, assessing his team, his gaze stopping for a fraction of a second when he spotted Olivia at the instrument table, gloves on, eyes locked in unwavering focus. She wasn't scheduled to be part of his surgical team today, but in the chaos of the emergency, the head nurse had assigned her. Olivia met his eyes briefly, offering nothing but silent readiness before turning her attention back to the tools. "All right, let's get to work," James ordered. The operation moved forward with intense precision. Olivia remained steady at her station, anticipating each request before it was spoken. She moved seamlessly, her hands swift, her focus absolute. Then an unexpected complication. A ruptured artery. Blood surged more aggressively than anticipated. For a split second, the surgical assistant hesitated. "Clamp," James commanded. Before the assistant could react, Olivia had already placed the clamp firmly in James's hand. No hesitation. No misstep. James turned sharply to her, locking eyes for the briefest moment. He didn't offer praise, just a single knowing look. "Good," he murmured, then continued. For the next 2 hours, Olivia worked flawlessly as though she had been part of this team for years. James noticed. She wasn't just doing her job. She was anticipating, adapting, executing with confidence. When the surgery ended successfully, James peeled off his gloves and turned to her. His voice, usually brisk, slowed slightly. "Well done, Nurse Carter." "Thank you, Doctor." Olivia's voice remained calm as they began cleaning up. The surgical assistant, visibly irritated, muttered, "You didn't have to jump in like that." Without looking up, Olivia replied evenly, "I didn't want Dr. Walker to lose his rhythm." James heard the exchange but said nothing. He knew, too, what he had seen. He knew exactly who had kept that operation from spiraling into chaos. Word of Olivia's performance spread quickly. The nurses' lounge was the first place the rumors took root. "She's just trying to impress him," one of them scoffed. "Jumping in like that. Who does she think she is, yeah? Acting like she's so much better than everyone else." A third nurse chimed in. "Well, guess what? Dr. Walker actually complimented her. I heard it myself." The first nurse snorted. "Let's see how long that lasts. A man like him. He's not interested in someone like her." But deep down, they all knew something had shifted. For the first time, James Walker, the surgeon, who had never shown interest in anyone, had looked at Olivia Carter differently. And that was enough to spark something of far more dangerous than gossip jealousy. Days turned into weeks, and Olivia Carter became a name people at St. Charles couldn't ignore. She worked with quiet efficiency, earning the trust of both patients and doctors. And James Walker, he found himself noticing her more than he cared to admit. It wasn't intentional. Olivia didn't seek attention, didn't try to impress him like the others. She simply did her job, calm, composed, unaffected by hospital drama. Maybe that was what intrigued him the most. One afternoon, James passed through the cardiology wing to check on a post-op patient. As he entered the room, he saw Olivia already there, speaking softly to the elderly man propped up in bed. She adjusted his pillow with practiced ease, her voice steady as she explained his medication schedule. "All set, Mr. Henley. Try to get some rest." Her warm smile lit up her face. James lingered at the doorway, observing as the tension in the patient's face eased. Olivia hadn't just gone through the motions, she had connected. Finally, James stepped forward. "How's he doing?" Olivia turned, momentarily surprised to see him, but composed as always. "Vitals are stable. He's a bit anxious about recovery." James nodded, glancing at the monitors. "You handled that well." Olivia's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "I just listened to him." James studied her for a beat. Listening isn't as easy as it looks. Their eyes met, the silence between them charged with something unspoken. "Anything else you need me to follow up on?" Olivia asked. "No," James said, a fraction too quickly. "You've done well." Olivia nodded politely before walking away, leaving James standing there deep in thought. James tilted his head slightly, the corner of his mouth lifting in a rare smile. "You don't always have to call me Dr. Walker. Just James is fine." Olivia raised an eyebrow, her gaze flickering with brief contemplation. "I'll try to remember that, James." A quiet chuckle escaped him before he turned away. But as he walked down the corridor, a thought lingered. Something about the way she said his name, soft yet assured, felt different. Of course, at St. Charles, nothing went unnoticed. In the break room, the whispers had already begun. "Have you noticed how Dr. Walker keeps hovering around Nurse Carter?" One nurse asked, her tone sharp with curiosity. "Hovering," another scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous. He's just being polite." "Polite?" The first nurse smirked. "Polite doesn't mean standing around longer than necessary." By lunchtime, the rumor had spread like wildfire. Then, on an otherwise ordinary Thursday afternoon, something happened. Something that, at least to the nurses, was utterly shocking. Olivia had just finished checking on a patient when she heard James's voice behind her. "Nurse Carter?" She turned, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. "Yes, doctor. Are you free for lunch?" His tone was casual, effortless. Olivia blinked, tilting her head slightly. "Lunch?" James cleared his throat subtly, as if realizing how odd the question sounded. "Yes. I'd like to discuss your performance on the surgical team. Strictly work-related." She studied him, searching for any hint of an ulterior motive. His face remained composed, unreadable. "All right," she said after a pause. "I can go." A small, rare smile flickered across his lips. "Good. I'll see you in the cafeteria." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Olivia standing there, acutely aware of the curious stares directed her way. She exhaled slowly, shaking her head. "It's just lunch. Strictly professional." But as she walked through the hallway toward the cafeteria, she could feel the weight of the eyes following her. Clusters of nurses huddled together, whispering in hushed tones as she passed. The air felt thick with judgment. "Did you see that?" One nurse hissed, not even bothering to lower her voice. "She must think she's special." Another muttered, her gaze sweeping over Olivia with scrutiny. "Just trying to win him over," someone sneered. Olivia kept walking, her posture straight, her steps steady. Her face betrayed nothing, but the words settled like tiny barbs against her skin. She had heard worse in her lifetime, but that didn't make it any less exhausting. When she reached the cafeteria, James was already seated by the window. She hesitated for half a second, keenly aware of the eyes still watching, before taking a deep breath and striding across the room to sit across from him. "Thanks for coming," James said, seemingly unfazed by the attention they were receiving. "It's just lunch," Olivia replied smoothly, though a hint of humor tugged at the corner of her lips. James glanced at her, the corner of his mouth twitching slightly. "Exactly." For the next 20 minutes, they talked about work, patients, surgical procedures, how Olivia was adjusting to the hospital. James listened intently, asking questions, realizing he was genuinely interested in her perspective. Olivia answered with clarity, direct yet unassuming, never once trying to impress him. But what stood out most to him was her humility. She never spoke about herself unless asked. She didn't seek recognition or praise. Competence, confidence, and something else. Then, almost out of nowhere, James asked, "Why did you choose nursing?" Olivia glanced up, momentarily caught off guard by the personal question. She paused, then replied simply, "Because helping people at their weakest moments matters. It's not glamorous, but it's meaningful." James held her gaze for a long moment. The thought lingered with him even after their meal ended. Back at the nurses' station, the atmosphere had shifted. No one said anything outright, but the silence was louder than the whispers. Eventually, one nurse broke the tension, her voice sharp as a blade slicing through the air. "So how was lunch?" Olivia met her gaze, the barest hint of a smirk playing at her lips. "Quite good. Thanks for asking." The nurse's face darkened, but Olivia turned away before she could show him another word. She wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of seeing her flustered. Meanwhile, in the surgical suite, James skimmed through patient files. From the hallway, fragments of whispered conversations reached his ears, nurses murmuring, dissecting, speculating. He paid them no mind. People would talk, that was inevitable. But what mattered was this: over lunch, he had realized something. Olivia Carter was unlike anyone he had ever met. And for the first time in years, Dr. James Walker felt something he hadn't in a long time: curiosity. A nurse, Lily, stifled a laugh behind her hand. Olivia's fingers tightened around her coffee cup, but she didn't react. She had encountered enough passive-aggressive mind games in her life to know when to ignore them. "Relax," she said evenly before turning away. "Sure," Megan replied. "Just don't overwork yourself, star nurse." By the weekend, Olivia started noticing something strange. Her shifts had become increasingly grueling, back-to-back rotations, double shifts, overnight rounds. When she checked the schedule, a peculiar pattern emerged. "Is this right?" Olivia asked Lily one afternoon at the nurses' station, pointing at her name on the board. "I've been on night shifts 4 days in a row." Lily shrugged, her tone nonchalant. "It's rotation, Olivia. We all do our part. But I covered for Jenny on Monday and Laura on Wednesday, so are you saying I can't handle it?" Lily cut her off, eyes gleaming with challenge. "I thought you were tougher than that." Olivia bit her tongue, willing herself not to snap. "I can handle it. I just want to make sure it's fair." "It is," Lily replied sharply. "Maybe you should focus less on schedules and more on your extra duties." Olivia frowned. "What do you mean?" Lily smirked but didn't answer. Olivia turned away, frustration boiling inside her. The hostility was no longer subtle. She could feel their eyes tracking her every move, their whispers scraping against her confidence like sandpaper. The worst part was how their jabs were delivered under the guise of kindness. "Wow, Olivia, you're so lucky Dr. Walker notices you," a nurse said one morning as they prepped a supply cart. Olivia glanced up, frowning. "What do you mean?" The nurse smiled, but the expression was too polite, too calculated. "I mean, it's rare to see someone like him paying attention to someone like, well, you. Must be your charm." Olivia froze, the words hitting her like a slap. She exhaled slowly, her hands clenching for a brief second before she steadied herself. "I didn't realize my job required charm," she said coolly. "Oh, don't be so defensive," the nurse replied, flipping her ponytail. "It's a compliment. You're breaking boundaries." Olivia didn't respond. She let the silence hang, and it was enough to end the conversation. But inside, the frustration simmered. James Walker wasn't blind. At first, he thought he might have been imagining things. One evening, he spotted Olivia in the corner of the ER, hunched over a desk with dark circles beneath her eyes. She was charting, her shoulders tense. He walked over. "Olivia, how long have you been on shift?" She looked up, startled. "Oh, since yesterday." James frowned. "You've been on for over 24 hours. Olivia gave a tired smile. "That's just how the schedule worked out." "That's not right," James said firmly. "I'll talk to the shift manager." "No," she interrupted, her voice soft but resolute. "It'll just make things worse. I'm fine." James studied her face. Something was wrong, but Olivia wasn't going to tell him. Her pride wouldn't let her. "All right," he said finally, though his jaw clenched. "At least take a break. You're no good to your patients if you collapse." Olivia chuckled, appreciating his concern. "Thank you, Dr. Walker." "James," he corrected softly. Olivia's smile faltered slightly, but she nodded. "All right, James." He lingered for a moment, eyes searching hers, before finally walking away. The following day, Olivia had just finished checking a patient's vitals when she heard James's voice behind her. "Olivia." She turned to find him standing there, looking hesitant. "Do you have plans this Saturday?" She blinked. "Saturday? There's a charity gala for the hospital's cardiac foundation," James explained. "It's a black tie event. I'd like you to come with me." Olivia stared at him, stunned. "With you?" "Yes," he said simply. Her heart started to race. "Dr. Walker, I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" Olivia hesitated. "People are already talking. This will just make it worse." James's expression softened. "Let them talk." "That's easy for you to say," she replied, frustration creeping into her voice. "You're not the one getting shifts dumped on you or backhanded compliments about how lucky you are." James's brows furrowed. "Is that what's been happening?" Olivia looked away, her shoulders tensing. "It doesn't matter." "It does matter," James said firmly. "I invited you because I think you deserve to be there, not because of them." She sighed, crossing her arms. "I just don't want to make it worse." James stepped closer, his voice gentler. "You won't be alone. I'll be with you." Olivia searched his face, looking for any hint of pity or ulterior motive. She found none. After a long pause, she exhaled. "Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you." James smiled, relief flickering across his features. "You won't regret it." As he walked away, Olivia shook her head, already second-guessing her decision. She had no idea what she was getting herself into. But deep down, a part of her was curious about the gala and about the man who refused to let her fade into the background. The night of the gala. The evening arrived sooner than Olivia would have liked. She stood in front of her small apartment mirror, smoothing her hands over the navy blue satin gown she had rented for the occasion. The fabric hugged her figure, perfectly elegant yet understated. It was the kind of dress she had never imagined herself wearing. Her nerves buzzed like static electricity as she pulled her hair into a soft updo. "You've got this," she whispered to her reflection. "It's just one night." The gala was being held at the Oak Ridge Grand, A sprawling hotel with glittering chandeliers and marble floors polished to a mirror shine. Olivia stepped out of the car James had sent for her and paused, taking in the scene. Women in floor-length gowns glided toward the entrance, their laughter chiming like bells. Men in sleek tuxedos stood in clusters, sipping champagne and murmuring in hushed tones. Suddenly, the weight of where she was hit her in full force. Then he stepped toward her. James Walker, dressed in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that fit him as though it had been made by the gods themselves. His blue eyes softened as they landed on her, and his smile was genuine. "Olivia," he said, his voice warm. "You look breathtaking." Olivia's cheeks warmed. "You're just being kind." "I'm not." He extended his arm. "Shall we?" Taking a deep breath, Olivia placed her hand in his, allowing him to lead her inside. The moment they stepped through the grand entrance, all eyes turned toward them. Conversations halted mid-sentence. A few champagne glasses hovered in mid-air, forgotten. The sudden hush was palpable. Olivia's heels clicked against the marble floor, echoing louder than they should have. She kept her chin high, forcing herself not to shrink under the weight of their stares. She leaned slightly toward James, her smile tight. "They're staring." Olivia suddenly felt overwhelmed by the formality of the place. James walked up to her dressed in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, as if it had been crafted by the gods. His soft blue eyes gazed at her, and the smile he gave her was genuine, full of pride. "Olivia," his voice was warm, "you look stunning." Olivia's cheeks flushed. "You're just being polite, aren't you?" "Not at all," he replied, extending his arm toward her. "Would you join me?" Olivia took a deep breath, placing her hand in his and allowing him to lead her inside. As they passed through the large door, every eye in the room was on them. Conversations halted mid-sentence, champagne glasses hung frozen in the air, forgotten in the stillness of the room. The silence was palpable. Olivia's heels clicked sharply against the marble floor, their sound drowning out everything else. She held her head high, trying not to shrink under the weight of the scrutinizing gazes. They stared at her, and she whispered through a tense smile, "They're staring at me." James leaned toward her, his voice low and calm. "Let them talk." The ballroom was impressive, with gold-accented details, candlelit tables, and a string quartet playing soft melodies in the back. Olivia tried to focus on the beauty of the room, but the furtive glances and hushed whispers pulled at her like invisible hands pulling at her confidence. James remained unfazed. He guided her toward a group of board members and hospital donors. "Good evening," James greeted them gently. "This is Olivia Carter, one of our exceptional nurses at St. Charles." The group turned to her with tight, forced smiles. A tall woman in a silver dress, Mrs. Taylor, extended her hand dismissively. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Carter." Olivia shook her hand firmly. "The pleasure is mine." A man, Mr. Bennett, raised an eyebrow. "James, I didn't know you'd be bringing a guest tonight." "I wanted everyone to meet someone special," James replied simply, his tone leaving no room for argument. The words "someone special" hung in the air, and Olivia felt her pulse quicken. "Special indeed," Mrs. Taylor muttered under her breath before taking a sip of champagne. Olivia heard it, but tried to ignore it. She smiled politely and stayed close to James, letting him lead the conversation while she scanned the room. As the evening wore on, Olivia began to feel slightly more at ease. James was her anchor, pulling her into lively conversations and sharing private jokes that made her smile. At one point, he leaned close and whispered, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Olivia replied, her lips curving into a smile, though the tension in her chest remained. "However, I think Mrs. Taylor might faint if she has to talk to me again." James chuckled softly. You're handling it better than most surgeons handle a triple bypass. Olivia laughed and shook her head. You've got a lot of jokes tonight. He smiled brightly. Only because of you. For a brief moment, it felt like there were just the two of them in the room. No judging eyes, no whispers, just two people enjoying each other's company. But that moment didn't last long. It wasn't the open insults that stung her, but the polite indifference. The women in glamorous dresses smiled at James deliberately, ignoring Olivia as though she were invisible. The men glanced at her and quickly looked away, unsure how to face her presence. She doesn't belong here. Whispers followed Olivia wherever she went, like mosquitoes buzzing around, unable to touch her. She's just a charity case. She's a nurse and she's black. What is James thinking? Olivia tried to push those thoughts away, but the voices echoed in her mind. Then a woman passed by, offering a cold smile. That dress is lovely. Where did you find it? Olivia smiled back evenly. I think they call it having taste. The woman's expression faltered, and Olivia turned away, fighting the urge to laugh. James noticed. Everything okay? Perfect, Olivia replied. He studied her for a moment before gently placing his hand on hers. You're doing great. If the party had felt like a battlefield, the hospital the next morning felt like a war zone. News of James publicly appearing with Olivia spread quickly, and when Olivia arrived for her shift, it seemed like the whole staff knew. Oh, Megan said from behind the nurse's station, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Look who's practically royalty now. Olivia ignored her, picking up a patient chart. It must be amazing, Lily chimed in loud enough for everyone to hear. Some of us actually have to work to get attention. Olivia looked up, her eyes sharp. What did you say? Lily's smile was icy. Oh, nothing. Just saying you've been lucky lately, from the party to James Walker. You're playing in a whole new league now. Olivia clenched the patient chart, but didn't let herself be provoked. I've worked for everything, including respect. Maybe you should try it. Olivia. James's voice cut through the tension as he walked up to the nurse's station, his gaze immediately finding hers. Can you step out for a moment? The other nurses fell silent as Olivia followed him into a nearby hallway. Are you okay? He asked once they were alone. I'm fine, Olivia answered, though her voice betrayed her exhaustion. You don't have to keep checking on me. James studied her for a long moment, then spoke with quiet certainty. You're not alone, Olivia. She looked up at him, the resolve in her eyes beginning to waver. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one. You're not alone, James repeated, his voice firm. I promise. Olivia held his gaze a moment longer before finally nodding. Okay. As James turned to leave, Olivia leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. The pressure of the judging eyes around her weighed heavily, but she wasn't about to let them break her. There was no denying that the hostility was no longer subtle. It started with small things. Olivia's name suddenly disappeared from the staff lunch list, leaving her to scramble with only cold coffee and adrenaline. Her patient load doubled with more critical cases shifted to her. By the end of the week, it was clear this wasn't a coincidence. Carter, you've got another call, room 214, hurry up, Megan barked from across the nurse's station. Olivia glanced up from her patient notes, furrowing her brow. I've already been to room 214 3 times today. Megan shrugged, twirling a pen between her fingers. Well, you should know the patient by now. Hurry up. Olivia grabbed her kit and hurried to room 214. It wasn't an emergency, just a post-surgery patient requesting some ice. When she returned after 15 minutes, her desk was a mess. The patient charts she had carefully organized were now scattered across the table, and her notes were missing. Lily stood by the counter, nonchalantly doing her nails. "What's going on here?" Olivia asked, her fist clenched, panic rising within her, despite her efforts to remain calm. Lily glanced at her tone still indifferent. "Someone probably just bumped into the table. You know there are clumsy people around." Olivia's hand tightened, her fingers curling into a fist. "Where are the Johnson case files?" Lily looked up, then her face feigning concern. "Maybe you left them somewhere. You should be more careful. The patient is relying on us after all. It's your job." Megan, on the other side of the room, smirked derisively. Olivia gritted her teeth, taking a deep breath as she tried to stay composed. "Don't let them see you're weak, Wung," she told herself. She spent the next hour redoing the notes she had already completed. By the time her shift ended, her legs ached, her head pounded like a drum, and the exhaustion weighed down on her like a heavy stone. The rumors spread like wildfire, silently weaving through the hallways of St. Charles Hospital like a disease. "I hear she's clinging to James to climb the ladder," I overheard someone whisper. "She thinks she'll get a promotion, or maybe she's looking for a surgeon husband to pay her bills. I really don't get what he sees in her." The whispers didn't stop when Olivia entered the room. They just quieted a little, but became sharper, cutting through her confidence like paper cuts. One afternoon, as Olivia passed by the nurse's station, she accidentally overheard her name in the conversation. "I'm serious. Look at her," Megan's voice rang out. "She's barely been here, and Dr. Walker's already treating her like she's important." Laughter followed. "She doesn't belong here," another voice chimed in. "Not in this hospital, and definitely not with him." Olivia froze outside the door, her heart pounding in her ears. She wanted to go in, confront them, demand an explanation for what their problem was, but she knew that would only make things worse. They would twist everything against her, accuse her of being unprofessional, unable to handle the pressure. Instead, she kept walking. She was the only black healthcare worker in the hospital, and she wasn't about to give them a reason to get rid of her. It wasn't until James found her at the end of a long shift when the cracks began to show. Olivia sat in the break room, hunched over her cold cup of tea, her scrubs wrinkled, her eyes dark from exhaustion. She didn't hear the door open until James's voice broke the silence. Olivia jumped, sitting up straight. "Dr. Walker." James furrowed his brows, looking at her appearance. "You look exhausted. Have you been here all day?" "I'm fine." Olivia tried to smile weakly, straightening her back. "It's just a busy shift." James crossed his arms, a look of disbelief on his face. "This isn't normal. I know your schedule. Why are you working 2 shifts in a row?" Olivia hesitated, looking down at the floor, her anxiety rising. "It's just how work is this week. It's nothing big." "Don't do that." James's voice was firm yet gentle. "Don't downplay it. What's going on? I don't want you to ignore this." Olivia gently avoided his gaze, trying to stop the tears from falling. "They'll say I can't handle this job." James knelt down, bringing himself eye level with her, his expression serious. "Who's they?" Olivia shook her head, the corners of her eyes stinging. She held it back, trying not to let her emotions take over. "It doesn't matter, I'm handling it." "Olivia." James's voice softened. He placed his hand over hers, holding it gently. "You don't have to do this alone. Tell me what's going on." His sincere words made her walls begin to crack. Olivia hesitated before finally admitting it. "They're making things difficult for me. The other nurses, the looks, the comments, the way they increase my shifts. It's not just in my head." James's jaw clenched, his blue eyes darkened with anger, barely restrained. "And you didn't think to tell me?" "Why should I tell you?" Olivia spoke quietly. "I didn't want to drag you into this, or make you think I need help." James stood up, his hands clenched at his sides. This isn't about needing help, Olivia. This is about respect, and they will respect you whether they like it or not. Olivia's eyes widened in surprise. James! He cut her off, his voice firm. I'm going to look into this. And if I find anyone deliberately sabotaging your work or treating you wrong, there will be consequences. Olivia stood up, shaking her head. I don't want you to make things worse. James turned back, his expression softening. I won't make things worse. I'll make things right. I won't let this continue. For the first time in days, Olivia felt a flicker of hope. She didn't know what James would do, but at least she knew someone was on her side. The next day, James was determined to find the truth. He began quietly reviewing the patient shift logs, noticing Olivia had been assigned too many shifts. He spoke with several senior staff members, inquiring about why her notes had mysteriously gone missing. The pieces slowly fell into place like a puzzle. Someone, or perhaps a few people, had been working against Olivia. By the end of the day, James had enough evidence to confirm what he had suspected all along. He caught Megan off guard. Megan, he called, his sharp tone making her stop immediately. Yes, Dr. Walker, Megan replied sweetly, but her smile faded when she saw the intensity of his stare. I'll be adjusting the shift schedule for the next few weeks, James said briskly. Make sure everyone knows. Oh, and I'll be personally overseeing the schedule. Megan's eyes widened. Dr. Walker, that's unnecessary. It is, James cut in. Any further mistakes will be handled directly. Megan swallowed her face, going pale. Understood. James turned and walked away, leaving Megan standing there speechless. The rest of the day seemed to settle down. Olivia had a surgery, a relatively simple procedure with no complications. The patient, an elderly man needing a small heart valve replacement, was stable for his age. Olivia had prepared early, setting everything up perfectly, as she always did. During the surgery, one of the surgical instruments slipped. Not because of Olivia, she wasn't even the one holding it, but she was the one left to deal with the consequences. The operating room fell into tense silence as everyone scrambled to figure out what went wrong, and all eyes turned to Olivia as they realized there had been a mistake in the instrument prep. Olivia, weren't you supposed to check the sterilization process for that instrument? Laura asked. Olivia felt her hands shake, her fingertips slightly sweaty as she double-checked the instrument. I checked it thoroughly, she replied, her voice steady but not enough to calm the whispers around her. Are you sure you know what you're doing, Olivia, or should you just stick to the simple surgeries? Olivia recoiled as if struck, their words sharp as knives, cutting so deep she felt they pierced through her body. She could feel the eyes of the entire room on her, the atmosphere thick with judgment. The surgery was salvaged, but the damage had been done. Olivia's heart raced as she stepped out of the operating room, trying to calm herself, but the whispers still followed her like a haunting shadow. Later that day, James entered the break room and found Olivia standing at the counter, her back turned to the others. She was trying to regain her composure, but the tension in her body was impossible to hide. He approached, his gaze locking on her tired eyes. Olivia looked up, and the pain in her eyes hit him like a punch to the gut. Hey, he said softly, his voice no longer carrying the usual professional coldness. Are you okay? She tried to force a smile but couldn't bring herself to meet his eyes. I'm fine. Just another normal day. James could see beyond her words. He didn't need to hear her speak to know something had happened. The tension surrounding her was palpable, and he wasn't about to let things slide without a change. He turned toward the nurses' station. He had heard the whispers, and he wasn't going to let his team treat Olivia as though she didn't belong here. As he approached, the room went silent, all eyes turning toward him. Megan stood near the desk, trying to look innocent. Olivia made a mistake, Megan said, barely holding back a smug smile. We just want to make sure she understands the standards here. James's eyes flashed with anger, and he stepped closer, his voice as cold as ice. If you understood what the real standard is, you'd see just how beneath her you are. Megan's smile faded. Excuse me, James didn't back down. You're too focused on criticizing others without seeing the bigger picture. Olivia handled a high-pressure situation that none of you could manage without breaking. And yet, you want to blame her for a mistake that wasn't even hers. He turned to face the group, his gaze sharp. You should all be ashamed of yourselves. The room fell silent, the tension hanging thick. Finally, Megan spoke, her voice dripping with venom. She doesn't belong here, Megan said coldly. She's not like us. The other nurses watched, their eyes narrowing. That's right, James replied, his voice growing louder, stronger. She's better than all of you combined. She's smart, she's capable, and she deserves to be here. As for you, he turned to Megan. If you can't accept that, maybe it's time you rethink your future here. The room was dead quiet, no one daring to speak. Megan opened her mouth to retort, but James raised his hand, cutting her off. I've had enough. This stops today. He looked toward Olivia, who entered the room quietly, her face pale but her eyes determined. I'll make sure you're treated with the respect you deserve. No more whispers, no more undermining, got it? Olivia nodded, though her heart was still pounding in her chest. She had never seen James like this before. As the confrontation settled, the nurses hurriedly dispersed, leaving only James and Olivia in the hallway. Olivia never expected him to speak up like that, especially in front of everyone. Her heart raced, but alongside it there was another feeling rising within her, perhaps admiration or gratitude. She turned to James, her voice trembling. Why did you do that? James met her gaze, his expression softening. Because you deserve it. No one should be treated like that, and honestly, I've had enough of how they've been treating you. It's wrong. A wave of emotion rose in Olivia, choking her up. She had always kept to herself, focused on the work, never asking for special treatment. But James had seen it all and stepped in without hesitation. I don't want to make things worse, she whispered, barely audible. I don't want to cause trouble. James shook his head, stepping closer to her. This isn't trouble, Olivia. This is standing up for what's right for you. You don't have to fight alone. Olivia looked into his eyes, feeling the walls around her starting to crumble. There was something in his gaze she had never seen before. You don't have to pretend to be strong anymore, James said gently. I know what they're doing to you, and I won't let it continue. I care about you, Olivia. I've admired you since the first time I saw you in the OR. Your strength, your grace, it's something I can't ignore. Olivia's heart skipped a beat. She had sensed something between them, but hearing him say it made everything crystal clear. I don't know what to say, Olivia stammered. James smiled, his lips curving gently. You don't have to say anything. I just want you to know I'm always here. No matter what happens, you'll never be alone. Months passed since the confrontation with the hospital staff, and their bond had only grown stronger. The gossip and hostility from the nurses and doctors had lessened significantly. Olivia had learned to walk through the halls with her head held high, no longer letting the whispers undermine her confidence. However, even though Olivia had adapted, James's unwavering support remained her rock. He continued to protect her in every way possible, whether facing those who made her life difficult or simply reminding her that she deserved all the love and success she had. They shared private moments, quiet conversations where they talked about the future, despite all the challenges life threw their way. One evening, after a long day at the hospital, James invited Olivia to a quiet spot in the city that held special meaning for both of them. It was a small park by the river where they had shared one of their first moments together. James had suggested it casually, but Olivia sensed something different about this evening. She didn't know it yet, but James had spent the whole week planning this moment. The proposal wasn't meant to be loud or public. It would be intimate, just the two of them. This was their journey, everything they had gone through, and everything that lay ahead as partners. James realized more than ever that Olivia wasn't just the woman he loved. She was his equal, his partner, his strength. The struggles they faced together only brought them closer, and deep down he knew he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. As they sat by the river, James took Olivia's hand, his touch gentle but firm, as if to anchor them in the moment. "Olivia," he began, his voice lower than usual. "These past few months have been the hardest of my life, but also the most meaningful. Watching you stand strong even when everyone tried to bring you down has shown me just how amazing you are. You've taught me more about resilience and love than I ever thought possible." Olivia looked at him, her heart racing, as she sensed a shift in the air. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she could feel something special. James paused, his expression softening. He pulled out a small velvet box from his pocket. When he opened it, Olivia's breath caught in her throat. The diamond ring sparkled under the moonlight. "Olivia Carter," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Will you marry me? Will you let me stand by your side the way you've stood by mine for the rest of our lives?" Olivia felt overwhelmed. She had always known that James cared about her, but this moment, it was something deeper. Her heart raced as she looked at him, struggling to find the right words to say. I don't know what to say," she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. James smiled, his hands gently lifting her face. "You don't have to say anything, Olivia. I've seen your strength, your heart, and your soul, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Olivia paused, her thoughts swirling. She thought of the hospital, the challenges they'd overcome, the whispers, the mockery, the hatred. But in this moment, all she felt was a quiet certainty that she had found someone who truly saw her for who she was. "Yes," she said, her voice soft yet clear and resolute. "Yes, I will marry you." James's smile beamed with joy as he slid the ring onto her finger, solidifying their future. They embraced the world fading away as they stood together, knowing this was the beginning of something beautiful, even though challenges still lay ahead. News of their engagement spread quickly, first through the hospital and then on social media. The people who had hated Olivia's presence in James's life were the loudest critics. It wasn't just the nurses anymore. It seemed the entire hospital had split into two factions. "Can you believe it? She's about to marry him, the outsider. How could she pull that off?" one nurse asked. "She's probably just using him for his money and connections," Laura replied. Olivia couldn't escape the gossip, but she remained calm. She knew her love for James was real, and no matter what the outside world said, she believed their relationship was stronger than anything others could throw at her. Finally, the day arrived, the day Olivia and James would marry. It was everything Olivia had ever dreamed of, yet completely different from what she had imagined. She had once pictured a small, quiet wedding, just the two of them. But today was nothing like that. This was a moment where she could stand strong, not only as James's bride, but as a woman who had fought for every bit of happiness she had. The ceremony took place at a stunning venue, surrounded by family, close friends, and a few of her colleagues from the hospital, some of whom had never truly supported her. Olivia heard the whispers, felt the cold stares, and sensed the distance. But none of that mattered anymore. Today, she would marry the man she loved, the one who had stood by her through every trial. As Olivia stood at the altar in her radiant wedding gown, James's gaze never left her. His expression was full of admiration and love as he vowed to protect and cherish her for the rest of his life. The significance of the vows was not lost on either of them. They had overcome so much together. When it was Olivia's turn to speak her vows, she did so with quiet strength, her voice trembling slightly but unwavering as she promised to always stand by James through every challenge, to love him with her whole heart, and never to turn away from the love they had built. Olivia, you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. I will love you forever no matter the challenges. Together we've proven that love can conquer all, James said. Guests wiped away tears, and in that moment no one could doubt that Olivia and James had found something extraordinary. They sealed their vows with a kiss, and the crowd erupted into applause, celebrating not only their union, but the powerful love that had brought them to this point. Later during the reception, as the newlyweds shared their first dance as husband and wife, the atmosphere was filled with joy and warmth. Olivia spotted a few familiar faces. Some of the nurses who had once mocked her stood off to the side, their expressions unreadable. One of them, Emily, approached Olivia cautiously. Her gaze was a mixture of regret and admiration. Olivia, I need to say something. I've never been good at admitting when I'm wrong, but seeing you here today standing with James, I realize how wrong I was. My jealousy clouded everything. You're not just an outsider. You belong here. I'm sorry. Olivia was taken aback by the apology, unsure of how to respond. At first, she had expected hostility or indifference, but this time it was something different. Emily's words were sincere, and in that brief moment, Olivia glimpsed the woman she used to be, one who believed in second chances. Thank you, Emily. I really appreciate your honesty. It's been a long time, but here I am, and I deserve this just as you do. Emily nodded, her eyes filled with tears, then quietly turned away. Not everyone changes immediately. But in that moment, Olivia realized that sometimes change comes from the smallest and most unexpected places. As the evening continued, James took the microphone, signaling a special announcement. The room fell silent, every eye on him. James, I want to take a moment to honor my amazing wife, Olivia. She's not just the love of my life, but a remarkable woman who has proven that her strength is unmatched. That's why starting next month, Olivia will be leading a new mentoring program for young nurses at the hospital. I have no doubt she'll inspire everyone just as she's inspired me. The room erupted into applause, and Olivia's heart fluttered in her chest. This wasn't just a career milestone. It was a culmination of everything she had achieved. It was recognition not only as James's wife, but as an expert in her own field. As the night wore on, Olivia and James left the party for a quiet moment together. Hand in hand, they walked under the starry sky, their hearts still racing from the events of the day. The noise of the wedding seemed far away, replaced by the soft sound of their breathing and the world around them. Olivia rested her head on James's shoulder, a peaceful smile on her face. They had faced so much together, and now at last they stood side by side. She had fought for her place, for their love, and now it was all worth it. I still can't believe we're here, all the struggles, the arguments, the whispers. They stood there in the quiet of the night, hand in hand, feeling each other's gentle breaths. Olivia looked at James, a soft smile on her lips, but her eyes glowed with newfound confidence, as though every challenge had helped her grow stronger. I've always been called the outsider, but I was always meant to stand out, Olivia said, her voice clear and strong. James looked at her, pride filling his gaze, his heart pounding in his chest. But he only smiled, holding her hand tighter, knowing now they had nothing to fear. "We made it, Olivia. We fought for each other, and we deserve this," he said, his voice warm as if those words were a vow, a promise to always stand by each other. Olivia nodded, feeling as though the whole world had shifted, and in that moment, everything around them seemed to blur, leaving only them and the love they had built. She could feel the powerful beat of her own heart, a sense of pride filling her chest. "Thank you for walking this road with me, a road full of hope." Olivia continued, her voice low but full of emotion. They stood there, saying nothing more, only the silent night sky surrounding them. Nothing could tear them apart now. If you're ready for another inspiring story, click the video on the left and don't forget to subscribe. It's the best way to keep these stories alive. See you next time in the next chapter of our journey. This story reminds us of the power of love, resilience, and the courage to stand up for what's right. If you're Olivia or James, what would you do when facing challenges in life and work? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might inspire others who need motivation to overcome obstacles. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to share it with friends and family to spread the message of love, unity, and resilience. Thank you for watching and supporting. Let's create an environment where love and respect are cherished, step by step with meaning. Wishing you strength and happiness always. Thank you so much for being here with us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the latest stories. All stories are adapted and retold with the support of AI, inspired by various sources, and carry the purpose of spreading kindness, inspiration, and meaningful human values. If there are any shortcomings, we sincerely hope for your understanding and continued support.